Hello there. Look at this. This handsome son of a bitch. Right here. So, this guy, that's me. Hey. Hey. So as I've been going through, the house and sorting through things, I found, pictures of myself from when I was younger that I haven't seen in a long time. Look at that. Look at that tie. Huh? Huh? Look at that tie. Yep. Anyway, yeah. So that was me in high school. Can you believe it? Hey, how you doing? Enough walks down memory lane there. Welcome to Morbid Mondays. Nice to see you. We are still in the process. Like, we still don't have the green screen and that kind of thing. It is a slow moving process to get all of that stuff done. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it. So yeah, slowly but surely, I'm still playing with the lighting and whatnot, but we're getting there. Over the next month or so, we'll get all this shit like all knitted up tight. I don't even have my proper coffee mug. I feel naked in many ways, mostly because I'm not wearing pants. Anyway, hey, it's the Halloween season. Holy shit. I couldn't be more excited. This year, I am going as this guy. I've got to find that tie. I'm sure I can dig it up somewhere. Hey, what's going on, Pete? Nice to see you. So, at any rate, I've ran across that picture this evening as I was cleaning some stuff up, and I've been obsessed with it a bit. So, hey, let's get started as we always do. With a quick look at what's been going on around the network since last we spoke. So you got your Friday's favorite movies on But I'm a Cheerleader, which was a really fun episode. It's a movie I've never seen, but I kind of want to watch it now after hearing those guys talk about it. Not a horror movie, but sometimes shows diverge into things that are not always horror related. But fuck that. It's Halloween. Let's get to some real shit. VD Clinic, episode 17 on The Handmaid's Tale, which is in no way a film and book and television series that has anything to do with our current climate. It is unrelated to anything going on in the news. But yeah, so that's, Darren and Vanessa over there discussing The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood and of course the series and whatnot. What else? You got your Devour the Podcast bonus episode where I have been chit-chatting about movies I've been watching. And by the way, if you downloaded that episode and it sounded overly familiar and was an older episode, I fucked up, to be honest. I fucked up when I was posting the episode and had the wrong link. So if you tried to listen to it and you thought, I've already heard this shit before, just delete the episode and re-download it, and the new one will be there. Or most recent one. There'll be a new one in a couple of days. So, what did I talk about? Devour the Podcast, VD Clinic, Pick 6 Movies, Season 3, Episode 4, as Chad and I are continuing the season entitled Monsters Are Universal. And in this case, we were talking about Memoirs of an Invisible Man, directed by John Carpenter and starring Chevy Chase, a movie that is not the highlight of the careers of either gentleman. And that was a fun episode to talk about. Cinema Psyops episode 165, talking about a movie called The Monkey Hustle. An uncomfortable title by the sound of the episode. And, it's a very funny episode. It's a movie that's kind of a blaxploitation film with Yaphet Kotto and Koto and Rudy Ray Moore. And the gentleman over at Cinema Psyops had a really good time with it. It was a fun episode to listen to, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's very funny. Who Will Survive, episode 18, 31 reviews of Halloween, where Marco and Paul are going through a bunch of 31 movies for Halloween, and kind of bailed on the episode, not bailed on it, but had to stop listening because, I got to come do this. And they were talking about both the Collector and the Collection, which are a pair of movies that I'm not particularly crazy about. But they enjoyed it a lot more than I did, and kind of gave both of those movies a little bit of a pass for being sort of entries into a franchise. I'm not sure I agree with that logic of movies being better because they're building to something. It's like, nah, you got to be your own movie, But at any rate, that's been a lot of fun. I like those episodes where it's just like, hey, we're gonna talk about some movies we've been watching and kind of give a rating of it in a big lump. We're gonna do 4 or 5 movies. And so, yeah, I've been enjoying that. In fact, I enjoy listening to those so much. I've been doing one of my own for the Devour the Podcast stuff. And thanks to everyone who's been checking that out. So, Mental Health, episode number 11, featuring Machine Head and Mastodon and Revocation. And it's an episode that just dropped less than 12 hours ago, so I have not listened to it yet, but I certainly will. And finally, just a few hours ago, dropped the latest episode of Devour the Podcast proper, episode 130, on the movie The Nun, and we also talk about the listener pick, Berlin Syndrome. We will not be doing a Wheel of Devour for the November episode because we already have those movies selected, and as we get closer, we'll talk more about what that episode is going to be, but I've got some work to do, quite frankly. So yeah, so that is what has been dropping here on the network. Alan says, for the record, the last episode of Pick 6 gave me a laughing jag that threw out my back a little, so well done, and expect a call from my lawyer. That's why we have the warning on the episodes. Now, you may not remember the warning because they don't exist, but thanks. I mean, I'm sorry to hear about your back. Good Lord, there's nothing worse than back pain. So I hurt my back. I cracked a vertebrae when I was a young man in my 20s. Got into a car accident. And it sucked. There is nothing worse than back pain because no matter what you move, your back moves along with it. And for people that aren't in the know, back pain is just absolutely... Back pain and ass pain are the two things that you don't really think about how much you move those things until... you've hurt one of them and you realize that just moving my arm actually moves my back as well. Oh, it's just the worst. Seriously, my heart goes out to you. That sucks, but I'm glad you laughed. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Pete says, I like feeling naked by being naked. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, I cover up my shame, and good Lord, I look at myself, look how bloated my face is. After the past few weeks, because I've been, in hospitals and dealing with lawyers and stuff like that, I have eaten like absolute shit, and started today back on the path to eating like a human being with, some respect for myself. So, Pete says he's headed to see a pre-screening of Halloween tomorrow night. I'm cautiously optimistic. Man, me too. I hope it's great. I probably won't see it till next week, but Godspeed, man. I hope it is. I hope it's fucking amazing. That is always my hope. With, not just Halloween movies, just horror movies in general, but also it's Halloween, and there's a bit of a blessing from Carpenter, although here's my thing with John Carpenter, and it's something we talked about a little bit on the Memoirs of an Invisible Man opening piece, where we try to be a little bit educational. And I think my concern is that John Carpenter has reached the stage of his career where he has basically said fuck it to everything. Aside from the music seems to matter to him. But in terms of them doing a sequel to Halloween, or a remake or reboot, or, whatever you want to call it, I suppose it is a direct sequel to the original Halloween. Oh, excuse me. I am so sorry, guys. But I think the problem that I have is that John Carpenter may not give a shit about that as long as they're giving him a paycheck, and that it's all kind of lip service. But we'll see. Alan says, stupid bodies waiting for brain in jar status. Yeah, me too, man. As long as I can figure out a way to watch horror movies and play video games in the jar, I think I'm going to be good. So, yeah, but, report back on the Halloween. I'm curious about that. So a couple of things that I want to chit chat with you guys about tonight. The first of which is, what do I have here? Yeah, there we go. Is The Haunting of Hill House. First of all, have you guys been watching it? Do you know of which I speak? It is the Netflix 10-episode series that is directed and written by Mike Flanagan of, Ouija, Origin of Evil, and Oculus, and Absentia, and what was the one about the kid, Before I Wake, and, with Gerald's Game. Hush, I think, is a tremendous piece of work. And, all right, so let me share a little story in by way of explaining my feelings about The Haunting of Hill House. So I was doing some laundry. The way that my house is situated, the washer and dryer are downstairs, meaning I go down the steps, through the basement, into the garage, and that's where the washer and dryer are. So the basement is unfinished. It's basically just a big cement room right now that ain't got nothing in it because I've been cleaning it out. And you can't turn the light on in the basement until you get to the bottom of the stairs. The light switch is only good for the stairs themselves. There's like a light right over the stairs. So you can't see into the basement and whatnot. And I had been watching about 4 episodes of The Haunting of Hill House, which I find to be tremendously creepy. And because it's a show that kind of, if not forces you, certainly rewards you at looking close at it and being very, like eyes open, staring at the screen kind of shit. Because there's constantly, faces in the background, or the statues will be facing one way and then somebody moves in front of them and then they're facing the other way. Like, it's almost like fucking Mad Magazine or something where there's all kinds of stuff in the margins. And so anyway, I've been super into The Haunting of Hill House. I'm, let's say roughly halfway through the series. It's been good and creepy. And I go down the steps to take care of some laundry. And as I'm going down the steps, I hear what sounds like footsteps immediately beside me on the stairs as I am descending the stairs too. And I didn't scream or anything, but it was definitely I flipped on the light as quick as I could get to it. And it turns out that, longtime watchers of Morbid Mondays know that the basement, when I originally moved in here, was kind of infested with crickets and bugs and shit like that. Well, I went through and did like a bug holocaust. And I have seen exactly one cricket in the past week, which is not a bad average as far as I'm concerned. But I had a can of bug killer at the top of the stairs so that when I flipped on the stair lights, if I saw a bug, I could just grab the Raid up and take care of the business. And what I had done is I had kicked the can of Raid so that it was tumbling down the stairs as I was descending also, creating the sound of something moving down the stairs at the same time I did. And it was one of the best scares I've given to myself in some time. But I say that to say that I was absolutely primed for that by The Haunting of Hill House because of the buffet of horror that it is, where it's like, oh, do you want a jump scare? Here's some of those. Do you want the creeping dread kind of horror? Here's some of that. Do you want the family drama stuff? Here's some of that, and I think well done. So we're gonna actually the next episode of Devour, the bonus episode, as I'm talking about the movies I've been watching and stuff. There's gonna be a break from me just talking about random movies I've been seeing for Vanessa and I to talk about Haunting of Hill House in a bit more detail, and look for that sometimes towards the end of the week. So we'll get into it a lot more then. I'm really curious what you guys think of it, and what your experience has been with it. But I will say, in addition to creeping myself out as I walk down the stairs, alongside a rolling bottle of Raid, I think it was the 7th episode, maybe? At any rate, there is a jump scare in The Haunting of Hill House that forced me to make this noise. I did that. I literally gasped. And when it happened, it was one of those moments, because I'm kind of jaded as a horror viewer. It doesn't happen very often that I even jump at jump scares. Sometimes you do, just because it's like, oh, it's been dark, and then there's a loud sound, and the natural human reaction is to start at a sudden loud sound. But no, this was I am into this scene, I am focused on the characters, and then there is a jump scare that kind of comes out of nowhere that made me jump out of my fucking skin. And as soon as I gasped, I then immediately laughed and clapped my fucking chubby hands together, because I was so excited by the fact that the show got me, and it got me good. It got me good. Mike Flanagan got me good. So yeah, I don't want to say too much more about it right now, because like I said, I'm going to get deep into it with Vanessa, and we're probably going to get real spoilery. So I'll do some time codes when we drop that episode. Alan's saying he's really looking forward to blocking off some time for it. Yeah, man, I mean, I can't recommend it enough. If you enjoyed anything Mike Flanagan has ever done, one thing I will say, and this is not a spoiler at all, is that even though it is based on the Haunting of Hill House, the classic Mish Moneypenny, the classic, boy, this thing's right in my face, huh? The classic Shirley Jackson novel, it feels almost like a Stephen King novel. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just that Mike Flanagan, I think, is partial to Stephen King, understands the marriage of the everyday, the sort of mundanity of family life and so forth with the supernatural. And that's how it plays out. It plays out like you're reading it. There are hints of it and The Shining, and yeah, it's just, it's so fucking good. I really, really liked it. I really liked Haunting of Hill House. So again, I won't spoil anything if you haven't seen it, other than to say I had a marvelous time with it. I thought it was scary. I thought the characters were great. I thought the performances were great. And it hit me on a personal level. Like, when I say the characters and performances were great, I mean, like, I got kind of emotional a couple of times watching The Haunting of Hill House, not just scared, although it did that too. And the minor complaint I have for it is I think it starts stronger than it finishes, but my quibbles with it, and we'll get into that on the Devour episode, are nothing compared to the time I had watching it. Like, I can't tell you that whatever problems I have with the way that the story resolves itself are not so grave that I would tell you not to watch it. In fact, a lot of people have no issues with the ending at all. So, Alan says, not surprised with the King influence. Hush came off like an audition piece to gain King's approval. I mean, like I said, even though Shirley Jackson wrote Haunting of Hill House this feels like a Stephen King novel played out large. You know, it's like if The Shining miniseries had been done by somebody awesome instead of Mick Garris. So, sorry, Mick Garris. Yeah, it's so good. So, yeah, so Haunting of Hill House is amazing, and that also led me to the question of, is this the best time for horror television? And when I asked that question, I was thinking about not just Haunting of Hill House, but Jamie really liked Ghoul, which I know is only a 3-episode arc on Netflix, but American Horror Story. There's about to be a new Twilight Zone from Jordan Peele. There is The Walking Dead, of course, and Fear the Walking Dead. There's, what am I leaving out? American Horror Story is still going. And another one I'll talk about, while we're on the subject of horror series, Ash vs. Evil Dead recently, and one that I tend to like, which is this guy right here, which is Stand Against Evil. And Alan says, I served Mick Garris a chicken sandwich once. His hair is lustrous. I imagine so. He looks like he takes good care of himself and his hair. But so, when I'm thinking about horror television, I'm like, man, there's so many options. And I'm not even getting into like Channel Zero stuff, the sci-fi stuff, like Winona Earp and Van Helsing and all that kind of shit. And The Terror was recently on AMC, and I think that's turning into an anthology that they're going to bring back. Like, I just can't think of another time when there were so many options for horror television, and also so many options that were great. I mean, I would have told you that I would not see a better television series this year after watching The Terror. And now I have some question of, is Haunting of Hill House better than The Terror? Maybe. In some ways it is, in some ways maybe not. But, man, I'm amazed at the options out there for us as horror fans. So yeah, and Stand Against Evil, the reason I want to point that out is that always felt like it was living in the shadow of Ash versus Evil Dead, but of course, that's gone by the wayside now and is not an option anymore, unfortunately. But I always, I caught up recently on Stand Against Evil, and I found it to be really charming. I think it's not as polished as Ash vs. Evil Dead, and it's not as gratuitous. It feels much more like, in a weird way, like if King of the Hill were live action and had horror elements. There is more of a sort of gentility to Stand Against Evil, but I really like the lead actor, whose name is escaping me right now. The guy who played Perry Cox on Scrubs, and I can't believe I remember that and not the actor's real name. McGinley? Not Ted McGinley, something. At any rate, doesn't matter. It does matter, but I can't remember right now, so fuck you. But he's really good in it, and especially towards the end of the second season, there's a really nice emotional moment with him where it's like, oh, I suddenly like this character a lot more. I also like the fact, speaking of Peter Quint, that he modeled the character on Quint from Jaws and has the same kind of mustache / sideburns thing. And yeah, it's one of the, like, there's too much good horror out there to see. And I don't know why I watch so much crap. It's just, I don't know, palate cleanser, I suppose. Or just personal preference, really. But, yeah, so Peter says, I still want Duncan and Bo versus the Evil Dead. We might do that at some point. We've got the Coen Brothers show coming up pretty soon, and True Detective starts in January. So probably not before that. But we may very well, and by the way, we're doing a new commentary. We're recording that tomorrow. So there will be new Duncan and Bo commentary stuff this week. and which I'm excited about doing. It's going to be fun. Way spoilers: we are doing Highlander. Duncan and I are going to talk over the film Highlander, and I will, tell various stories about my time as a Highlander, and I'm sure none of us will do Sean Connery impressions. But yeah, I could see us doing that now that it's wrapped up and we know for sure, like, hey, there are 3 seasons of Ash versus Evil Dead. And because they're half hours, we might do a thing where it's like, oh, we're going to do two episodes per 2 episodes of Ash versus Evil Dead per episode that we do. I don't know. I'll mention it to him because I don't think that's a bad idea because it's finite. It's something that we could get through pretty quickly. But yeah, I'm, again, just as I muse to myself about how awesome it is to be alive at a time when there's such good horror out there. Not only that, horror television, specifically horror series, are just fucking rad, man. I mean, there's so much good stuff out there. So let's talk very briefly about what else is going on. Obviously, if you're watching this, like, I'm getting settled into the house, and this room is actually going to be dedicated not just to the podcasting stuff, but also to a little bit of video production. And I've got the room. I mean, you can't really see it now, but there's enough room in here that we can actually move around some, and I'm excited about doing some of that stuff. Alan says, have you checked out Supermax on Shudder? I've been pleasantly surprised. No, I haven't. And that's, see, it's another fucking thing that, all right, I'll see what I can do. What else was I going to say? More video stuff is on the way. I would like to do more video reviews. It's just that takes a little bit longer, to put together. But I might do that sooner rather than later. I'm starting to get to the point now, like once I get all the studio stuff set up in here, I want to do more of that. Been working my way through the movie a day kind of thing. Although with Haunting of Hill House, that counts as 2 people. That is, that's 10 hours, and I'm only counting it as 2 parts. But oh, fuck, Haunting of Hill House is good shit. So, more of that is coming. Like I said, that episode will be out sometime this week with Vanessa and I talking Haunting of Hill House, as well as me just rambling about the other movies I've been watching. And I'll tell you what, while I am going through what is new on streaming, if you got any other questions, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll wrap this one up fairly quick tonight. So here's what's coming to the streaming services between now and when next we speak. Kind of a slim pickings. The only services that are bringing anything new horror related to the table are Amazon and Shudder. On Amazon, starting tomorrow is the movie Devil, the M. Night Shyamalan produced film, which is not very good. However, on Wednesday, they're dropping Donnie Darko, and if you've never seen Donnie Darko, boy, you ought to watch Donnie Darko. It's a really, really good movie. On the 18th, the movie Slice with Chance the Rapper, the kind of slasher movie set in and around a pizza place. I haven't seen that yet. I'm looking forward to watching that. I will check that out. And then on the 19th, Amazon is dropping Lore Season 2, the television series based on the podcast, another horror series, kind of more real life horror, but certainly traffics in horror and dark fantasy, as well as sort of real life examples of that kind of thing. But yeah, so Lore Season 2 is going to be hitting Amazon on the 19th, which, if my math is right, is Saturday, Friday. What's today? Maybe it's Friday. And then on Shudder, starting today, this very day, you can check out The Awakening, which is Rebecca Hall and Dominic something from The Wire. At any rate, it's kind of a ghost story set in a boarding school. It's okay. It's a little dry and not necessarily in a good kind of novel-esque way. a literary way. It's just, not terribly well paced, I would argue. But if you've never seen it, the James Whale film from 33, 34, somewhere in that neighborhood, The Old Dark House. Man, if you want to see the roots of something like The Haunting of Hill House, it kind of goes back to The Old Dark House. Like, that is the sort of the cabin in the woods of the 1930s. It is a really, really cool movie. And if you've got Shudder and have never seen The Old Dark House, you kind of should. It's, like all movies from that time period, it's going to run you about 70 minutes. And man, it's good. Karloff is in it. Who else? Is Colin Clive in that as well? Mae Clark, I think, is in it. A lot of the James Whale regulars. And then on the 18th, Shudder has a film called Witch in the Window coming. So that is everything coming to the streaming services. Hey, also, if you are interested in more of this kind of stuff, over on Patreon, patreon.com/Legion Podcasts, if you want to help support us over there, a couple of bucks a month will get you access to the commentaries. And we just recently, it was me, Darren Wilson, and David Anders doing the movie The Beyond. So we try to pick movies that are streaming on Netflix or something like that, so you can listen to the commentaries that we're doing for free, or $2 a month. But so, if you're interested in helping support Legion Podcasts or you don't give a shit about supporting the Legion Podcast, but you're willing to pay a couple of bucks for, these commentaries that are available nowhere else, then you can find that over on patreon.com/Legion Podcasts. So that is it for this Morbid Monday. Just a couple of things to ask of you. If you know somebody who is looking for some horror podcasts, do it all used car dealer style and say, what do I got to do to put you in a Legion podcast show today? We appreciate it. And, we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you supporting the shows, just by downloading them. And, and if you wouldn't mind giving us a little lip service, if you know of somebody that's looking for a horror podcast, we would appreciate that. Also, I would personally appreciate it if you would have a great rest of the week. Have yourselves a fantastic weekend. And join me right here next time for another Morbid Monday. So I think that's going to do it, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Bye.